Sugar. I've been in the game for years.
What?
It made me an animal. It's rules to this shit. Wrote me a manual, step-by-step booklet for you to get your game on track, not your wig pushed back. Renegade coaches in the building.
Brooklyn.
Hey.
You represented well. Bridgeport.
I represented well. Yo, Bridgeport harder than the time. Shout out to all my people in Bridgeport, Connecticut.
Word.
Please lift that band that you got on Kamau coming through. I know he thinks shit's sweet, but when he come through there, if he ain't with me, give him a pass.
Yeah, Bridgeport. All three of you niggas are still up in there. What's up, y'all? I hope y'all good, yo. Yo, it's Renegade Culture and Kamau K. Franklin, and we got...
I'm Kalonji Changa, the riot starter, the Renegade, always throwing shade, ace of spade.
Oh.
Don't drink that, Uncle Remy.
Oh.
Hey.
And I go by the name of the Ear Doctor. Good.
Transmitted live, you know it's Minister Server, along with...
It's your boy Jai.
Ja
be looking like he want to sing. He be like, it's your boy Jai.
I know, I see an R&B career, you know what I'm saying?
He look like an R&B cat.
He does, them tight ass t-shirts, you know what I'm saying?
A nasty backup singer.
Yo, he do that. Yo, he like
He having his titties all hanging out.
He like Baba L'uqman size, but he got my t-shirt on. That shit it ain't gonna work like that, Jai. You gotta respect the dialect.
True.
Anyway.
How you doing, man? Things going good?
Look here, man. I'm alive on arrival. Out earlier.
What up?
I was on my man Dr. Jared Ball's joint. We was rocking out for Mumia.
Talking some serious shit,
We was talking some serious shit. We had Bob Boyle on there.
Love Bob.
Johanna Fernandez.
Uh-huh.
We had Kim Brown. Kim Brown cursed more than me.
I saw her burn it down.
Oh, man.
She was listening. She was like, arson this.
She was taking notes.
Yeah. Burn that down. I was like, well, all right then. I like her.
And we had another sister. I can't think of her name right now. Williams, I believe. But she was on point as well.
She was on point too?
Yeah, so,
man, some serious shit. We glad Mumia came through his surgery.
No doubt.
Looks like his progress is improving. Everything seems to be going well, but I know there's still a lot of court case and information to find out around his health. So keep tuning in to Black Power Media.
Without a doubt.
Because there's going to be some updates on you on Mumia, his health, and what's going on next with his case.
No doubt. And it's free Mumia all day, a day. In fact, free them all. Free all political prisoners. And any of y'all talking about anything about the freedom of political prisoners, y'all thinking. You know what I'm saying? If you ain't talking about getting your comrades out first, all the other shit is bullshit.
True that, true. So what we got going on in the world,
Hey,
man?
I just want to say this.
Uh-oh.
There was a song that we used to sing, and it's called I'm So Glad That I Go to Morris Brown. I'm so glad
Break it down,
that I go to Morris Brown. Yes, Morris Brown, we back,
big
baby.
up to Morris Brown.
Got all the accreditation back after all that shit talking these motherfuckers was talking about.
That's right. That's right. On the real, we bought Morris Brown. You know what I'm saying? So all them, the rejects, they graduated like the Ear Doctor. We revoking your damn applications and everything.
After 20 years, Morris Brown has finally got his accreditation.
That's right.
But on the real, you know what I'm saying? We're going to be talking about Morris Brown one of these days because Morris Brown, the real Morris Brown was a freedom fighter, you know what I'm saying?
No doubt.
So, you know, we joke around a lot, you know what I mean? But definitely, we joke around when it comes to the school itself because you got folks like the Ear Doctor, Rob Love, and folks like that. I mean, it's like giving away degrees. They like, take 2, take 3.
I took my African Studies degree and got up out of there.
You did?
Did you learn anything?
Oh yeah, definitely. I learned that slavery is over and I'm gonna work for myself.
Okay, if you learn that slavery is over, you
had to go to Morris Brown for that? There you go, though.
Slavery's not over, just change places, my man.
True.
Anyway, what's popping right now?
Well, what else is going on? Something in Columbia, South Carolina took place?
Yeah, you had another white boy that lost his goddamn mind, a white sergeant for the U.S. military, punk ass, trying to bully a little young black boy. I was wishing that could have been me. I'd have smacked the goddamn brown stew chicken out of him.
Oh,
but unfortunately, it wasn't me. So, you know what I'm saying? He had the young man trying to pin him up, trying to, you know, pushing on him and whatnot. Another young sister recorded it. But in the spirit of Columbia, South Carolina, and I was locked up in Columbia. They don't fuck around in Columbia. You get your wig pushed back. The brothers came through the neighborhood and surrounded dude's house and shit. You know what I'm saying? They like, yeah, let's do that shit right now. Pull a smack game, pull a push game again up here. You know, so shout out to all the brothers and sisters in South Carolina, you know what I mean, for keeping it trill, you know what I mean? And the staff sergeant, I forgot his name, was
it's Jonathan Petlin.
Jonathan Penderuse, Duncan Penderuse. His punk ass, I hope that, you know, that somebody catches his ass, push him around.
He got third-degree assault. He got charged
third-degree assault ain't shit. You know what I'm saying? I mean,
30 days and $500 fine. That ain't shit.
He get probation or something.
Exactly.
And then the big news, of course, this week is that another young brother has been killed by the police.
Yes.
Brother Dante Wright, I believe in Minneapolis, if I'm not mistaken.
Brooklyn City.
Yeah.
Brooklyn Center.
Brooklyn Center.
Yeah.
20-year-old young man, you know what I mean, gunned down by the pigs.
Yeah. He was riding in his car.
Yes.
He had called his mom right beforehand because the cops was pulling him over, and they pulled him over extensively, what's called a pretext stop, because they claimed that his air freshener, right?
That's right.
Was hanging from his rearview mirror, and so they gave them the reason to stop him.
Probable
and then
cause.
They said he had outstanding warrants totaling $346.
Yes, which cost him his life.
It cost him his life. And then
But check it. The ill shit about it, cave bitch. That's right, I said cave bitch. She decides that she's gonna reach for her taser, just like Mertzel or whatever the hell his name was, out with the Oscar Brown case.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Back in, was it 2009,
2009, yeah.
Yeah, same situation, you know, and in so many different cases where they talk about they thought it was a taser. Now, for any of you who's ever picked up a weapon to go train with, or ever touched a taser, you know goddamn well that's some malarkey. I don't care how much she cried, we don't give a goddamn about that. I hope the same way that she gunned down that brother, that somebody finding their heart and their soul and their ass to return that favor.
So go ahead. Yeah.
And you know what really makes it even crazy that she's been on the force for 26 years. So, and she was training somebody at the time. So for her to act like she didn't know, she knew exactly what she was doing. And for anybody to think anything different, she's a demon killer cop, period. For her to even get manslaughter charges is bogus.
Now,
she knew exact 26 years on the force, and she resigns, you know, as soon as it happens. It's bullshit. And again, we're talking about a system that has no compassion, even though down the street, the trial is going on for George Floyd. You know, so it's much more serious than just this one case. We know that.
Yeah. So bust it. One of our favorite ambulance chasers, punk motherfucker who I was at a rally with one time, and I got the video, and he's standing behind me when I'm talking, he's looking around everybody like, do y'all believe what he just said? 2 weeks later, his monkey ass on CNN spitting my whole speech. You know what I'm saying?
Wow.
I guess it sounded better when he said it.
This is the attorney, Ben Crump.
Ben Crump the chump, his punk ass. You know what I'm saying?
This leads into what we're going to talk about a lot tonight.
Okay.
Is again this idea of petty bourgeois activism and organizing, this performative organizing. And again, you know, what came out this week too, and we're going to dig a little deeper as the sort of the lead, is that one particular organizer, activist, got some research done on them, some research, and found out that she was buying a lot of houses and property, and you know, based on some of these deals that she got as an organizer and activist helping to start the Black Lives Matter movement. Yeah. So we want to dig a little deep into that and talk about, you know, what's happening in terms of like organizing and activism, and how are folks getting away with this, and how we should view this and think about this in our community. So we're gonna be right back soon on Renegade Culture.
It's gonna be on fire tonight.
Yeah.
Boom! Renegade Culture back at you.
Yo, we in the building tonight. Renegade Culture, your favorite podcast on the whole goddamn planet.
I think that's true.
It is.
Know we have a lot of other podcasts.
Well, I mean, you know, they dope because they roll with the BPM.
That's true.
BPM.
That's true.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
They definitely on point. So we had to call a couple of them, some of our favorite folks from BPM. You know what I'm saying? We got the L'uqmans in the building tonight. They weren't even ready for that.
I know. Jacquie and Baba L'uqman. How y'all doing?
Baba L'uqman and Doggy L'uqman. I don't know where he at. I don't see him.
I'm sure he's going to make an appearance.
He's going to definitely show up.
You know what I'm saying? And then we got our number one all-time guest on our show. I think he's making like his 45th appearance.
This cat right here, he's no longer a guest. He's a co-host.
The co-host.
Of Renegade Culture Podcast. You know what I'm saying? We allow him. Can we have Jared as co-host right now?
Hey, man, why
No
not?
doubt, no doubt.
Okay.
Also co-founder of BPM.
Co-founder of BPM.
BPM, you know what I'm saying?
Okay.
Dr. Jared Ball.
The doctor.
Word.
Doctor,
good, people?
What's happening, doctor?
Always a pleasure to be back on my favorite podcast. The reason I tried to team up with you is because it was my favorite podcast.
It's a wise man.
We like that.
Okay.
L'uqman, how y'all doing?
We all right. How you doing, brothers?
Good.
Good to go. Good to see y'all here.
So we wanted to start off, we talked a little bit in the intro about why we wanted to have y'all on and talk about what's happening in terms of movement politics. And I wanted to start it off because we talk a lot about what folks are doing today and how they're organizing and some of the differences in terms of what we think real organizing is. But then when you start to talk about what's happening organizing wise, you get like this pushback. And I want to just name off 3 areas of pushback that you get and then have you guys start by commenting on that. So one is that, we are doing the state's job when we critique other organizers who are doing work. 2 is that the organizer is under pressure because they're getting threats, right-wing threats, that kind of thing, and so their life is in danger. And then 3 is that because this particular story that I'm talking about is not only the story, but this particular story was led by sort of a right-wing media sort of design, right? They put it out there, other media outlets picked it up, and that's how it got spread. No one necessarily disputes the information so far, to my knowledge, but that's how it's gotten spread. So it also feels like there's these ways in which when we start to have these conversations, these political dialogues, folks clam up quickly and they sort of hide behind certain shields. And we, on the other side, if we want to talk about it, then we're labeled in certain ways.
Yeah, we're the renegades.
Yeah. So I wanted to get you some opening. I'll start with you, Jared. Just some opening thoughts around what do you think is kind of like the proper way to discuss some of this stuff, and what do you think about some of the pushback that folks get when they try to have these conversations?
That's a great question. As you were talking, I made a note because I was thinking of something a former colleague of mine and I put together in a critique of Tyler Perry's work. And we called it part of the work, the Mantan Manifesto. And if people remember from the film Bamboozled, that when they bring in the white woman to counsel the brothers on how to present this fraudulent depiction of blackness on TV, they talk about one of the ways to protect against the critique is to hire black people to be on the production, get the Al Sharptons out there, get to blunt the Al Sharpton style critique, hire black people, put certain people in certain places, describe it as being something that's trying to reclaim the narrative of the past and redefine the old anti-black of the past in a new way, all the kinds of things that sound very similar to what we hear today when folks like us try to raise a hand and say a lot of the very popular promoted styles of activism and the platforms that people are taking is a very watered down, Mantan, bamboozled, cooning, step and fetch it kind of politics. And then, but what they're able to do with the help of and obviously a broader socioeconomic political apparatus and media, psychological warfare, institution, is to create a narrative of themselves as being legit, and that and then they can set the left edge and say anybody farther to the left is insane or lunatics or they're out of they're marginal, so therefore we have to vote for Biden.
L'uqman, do you want to comment on that quickly?
Yeah, I mean this whole thing about when we criticize in good faith and for good reason, people in the so-called movement, I guess if you want to call it, who are doing shady shit like Colors has been doing, and not just with buying the houses. People are really, it's like people like being in cults of personality, right? There are a whole lot of people who like people, especially online, You know, they like people, they follow them, but they're not really interested in doing any real work. They just like, you know, retweeting folks and watching their videos and that type of thing, and hopping on their live streams and you know, and the people who are in it, who are producing this content, we've said for years, these people are just doing this shit for likes and clicks, and you know, the Patreon money that they get from it. But beyond what they do online, they're not doing a whole lot. And in the case of folks like Colors, I mean, it's great if you're going to use your platform to raise a lot of money for the struggle. But if everybody else in the struggle is broke and still struggling, and you're buying $1 million house, more than one, then we have every right to sit there and say, hold up, we got people on the street who have been locked up. They need bail money. People's families need to eat. People are, you know, in these protests, and they're homeless. And I mean, these are things that are happening in the chapters in the streets right now. So, you know, folks who are doing all of this very public rah-rah, you know, holding up banners, Black Lives Matter, talking about holding the system accountable, these are the very same Bammers who refuse to be held accountable by the people they claim to represent. And I don't really care about folks coming after us, like, because we have had people like, oh, you can't say this about so-and-so because, you know, for whatever reason. And our response is, number one, watch us do the work. And number two, that person isn't God. You still have bills to pay. What the fuck are they doing to help you pay your bills? Not a thing. But if you called us and said, look, I really need help, we would bend, you know, move heaven and earth to see if we could help you, because we're connected to each other. But these folks, they're just not. So I think what we're seeing with this performative activism is what, you know, what we have been seeing over the past, I don't know, 6 years, finally coming to the surface in like a big, really gross way that you just can't ignore anymore.
Yeah, I also think that when you talked about the first couple of pushbacks, I really see that as a generational thing. You know, I see it basically a lot of these movements are being led by millennials. Not too many people from my generation, which is Gen X and older. And the millennials, they had a different orientation in this society. A lot of it is entitlement. A lot of it is, you know, we laugh about it all the time. But it was, you know, their socialization in this country had a lot to do with feelings and you know, protecting feelings, and it was all into a lot of this emotional work. And I'm not judging that at all. I just know when you and I kind of came up, there wasn't no padded playgrounds. I mean, it was glass all over the things. Nobody gave a fuck about how we played, you know. But the millennials, you know, it was more about being more nurturing, more, you know, you got the 5th place ribbon and all this other kind of stuff. And I kind of think that as they became adults, you know, a lot of millennials in the organizing work, they carry that with them. So now it's more of a recognition of not having a hierarchical leadership role. Everything's linear, everybody's equal. And I guess on some aspects, I can see the benefits of that. But it does have its weaknesses too. And I think that, you know, the pushback is that we can't criticize anybody. We can't, you know, and this goes back to this 5th place ribbon stuff. It goes back to protecting feelings and all this stuff. And in this type of work, I think that if we're going to be truly effective, we have to start toughening up. We have to understand that the world is a cruel, mean place. You know, when we look back at organizing during the 60s and at the height of the civil rights movement, they had workshops. I mean, they prepared these kids to not only be able to deal with the press, but they prepared these kids on how to deal with, you know, hostility and you know, it was from a nonviolent perspective, but still, they still didn't go into these situations blind. And they had leadership. I think that this tendency that we have today of really downplaying leadership, I think is hurting us. Because I think that if certain structures was in place, Patrice probably could have got away with what she was getting away with. You know, but when we have this tendency to feel that, you know, everybody's the same, you know, there's no gender, there's no this, there's no that, And I mean, people could live with the way they want to live. And like Jackie said, we took hits on that. But I do think that we have to have standards. I think that we have to have, confront these issues, not with all the time with the touchy-feely thing that we see so much in these movements now. And maybe because a lot of these movements, and I know I'm gonna get slammed for this, but but a lot of these movements, man, are headed by females. And so, and that's a good thing. Let me explain what I'm saying.
Oh, yeah. Explain that one.
They're headed by women, and what I mean is women bring a different energy. So, so unlike the male lead of other organizations, women bring a more nurturing. They bring other aspects to organizing that I think that is a strength there. But look. Whatever we bring to the table can always be fine-tuned, can always be tuned up. We can always examine things. And I think that one of the things that we have to be careful about, in my view, is that we have to allow, because see, just when I said that right now, I was like, where we going? But the thing of it is that we have to allow stuff to get on the table, and we all ain't gonna be right. And so I think that we have to be able to examine these things and with an honesty and sincerity, man, that without the fear of being jumped on. So we wrong. But let's look that we're all in this together.
To add on to what you're saying, I think that part of it also is class struggle within the movement itself. You know what I mean? Because of the fact that you've always had charlatans, you had the Jesse Jacksons, the Al Sharptons, so on and so forth. You know what I mean? So I wouldn't just say, I wouldn't just narrow it down to say women. I would just say that there are certain folks who come out of certain camps. For instance, those people who come under the Al Sharpton umbrella, they tend to lean and move in the same type of direction. You know what I mean? So there's always been the bottom feeders and the grave robbers. But I also agree with you, like right now, we're in a state where criticism is criticized. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But there's two types of criticism. There's antagonistic criticism and there's constructive criticism. And I don't see nothing wrong with some constructive criticism. Anyway.
But let's look at it this way. Just real
before
quick.
You do that, we're going to take our first break, and then we're going to let Jared come back in.
And we're going to
get back to that. So we're going to take our first break on Renegade Culture. We'll be right back. Bam.
Blah. Renegade coaches in the building.
Yep. We back.
What up, KK Frank? You
good?
good?
I'm good, man. How you feeling? You good with yours?
Man, listen, man. I'm alive on arrival, fighting for survival out here in this raggedy ass.
You like my shirt,
hole.
Man? You like this?
I like that shit. Yo,
I got dressed up for the shirt.
Okay. It was like Kwame and shit, like 2021, right?
He brought
I think his name is Kamau. That's pretty fresh.
That wasn't fresh at all, man.
I think it was dope.
All right, let's get back to our job.
Anyway.
You know what I'm saying? Yo, so Brother Jared, before we went to break, you wanted to add something to the discussion. Let's start off with you before we ask our next question.
Yes, no, I think I just slightly disagree a little bit with the total it being made totally or primarily about generation. I think, Kalonji, you were on to something when you were talking about the class and the trees that people come from politically. One thing I think we have to remember is that there is this, just like with art and music and politics is the same way, there's this commercially imposed layer. In this case, like a non-profit imposed layer. And then there's a lot of other stuff happening elsewhere, and that doesn't get a lot of attention, doesn't get talked about, doesn't even get debated about, that does have a very different kind of politics and leadership even. So I think that and the last part about that is that it's not millennials that have placed themselves in positions of prominence and power. It's people from my generation, our generation and up, who have said that's the form of leadership that we want to promote, and we want to suppress other forms. So I just want to always remind people it's the same way, like we can criticize commercial hip hop all day long, but we should always remember that there's a grassroots underground, a beautiful array of music being produced all around the world. And I think the same thing is happening politically. And I think BPM, honestly, myself included, has to just do a better job of tapping into that and promoting that and bringing them to the surface. So I think that's I think part of what our mission should be, beyond just the righteous criticism of the existing leadership or imposed leadership.
Well, and speaking about imposed leadership, and again, Kalonji mentioned this earlier, what we have, which seems like also is that this leadership that is imposed, like you said, at the same time, other leadership or other organizational apparatuses are suppressed, right? And the history of it comes really, at least the modern history, comes from when we had a Black Power movement, a Black Power movement in the 60s and 70s that was being suppressed. Organizers were being killed, jailed, organizations were being pitted against each other. And at the same time that was happening, funding and resources started going to certain branches of the movement, right? Civil rights branches. Obviously, there's the famous conversation of like Malcolm talking about the March on Washington and how Kennedy said, in his administration, take certain things out the march, say certain things and don't say other things. And each of y'all gonna get hit over with the $500,000 or something like that. And then later on, when Kalonji mentioned, Jesse Jackson and all his endorsements and the commercialization, again, these things and him basically taking things from like somebody like Fred Hampton, all these things started to come. And so it seems like also the state and or the sort of capitalist structure plays a prominent role too in deciding or trying to pick our leaders.
Absolutely. And then just very quickly, like in terms of, in terms of popular commercial media in this country, there was a time people might not, it's crazy to think that even in our lifetime, there was a time where you would have seen Huey Newton on ABC, on primetime television debating a right winger, but he'd have been there. You'd have seen Stokely or Kwame Ture or even H. Rap Brown on actual national news, debating, discussing, being heard. We don't hear that wing of politics in popular media anymore. Even before he passed, Amiri Baraka talked about that the state and its media apparatus had corrected itself in the 80s and 90s and said, no more of that stuff. We're not even going to allow it in for the debate. So now the range of debate is so far dragged to the right that almost anything sounds radical, especially when it comes, with a slick hashtag and some, pretty and talented people behind it, promoting it. So
I think to add on to what you're saying, you mentioned different freedom fighters. One of the things that we're blessed, I think, with our generation, I know Kamau and I coming from the East Coast, just knowing a lot of these folks who are looked at as legendary. You understand what I'm saying? So you have a divide where you have a lot of these, and I'm not, by no means am I picking on millennials because of the fact that I know that we have some hardcore young freedom fighters out here.
We do.
You know what I'm saying? And there are some that's on bullshit because, again, where they get their training from. You know what I mean? Now, some might have just got it straight from the internet. You know what I mean? Wikipedia. And some may have got them from some of these jackleg ass organizations out here who really secretly hate us, folks like us who are the freedom fighters. And I'm gonna just say that shit because there's a lot of so-called organizers out here with fancy names and shit, organizations, you know what I mean, that sound real hardcore, but they're really some pacifist fucks, you know what I'm saying? And they're about the money, and if they could, they'll be walking around looking like, what's the little dude name? If it ain't about the money, that's their motherfucking mantra, you know what I'm saying? They'll be walking around moving the same way. I'm careful as how I speak because of the fact that I'm old school, but at the same time, I recognize that we're in an era where you have a lot of, as the kids in Atlanta would say, fuck boy shit. You understand what I'm saying? And it's a whole lot of that, and I don't even call these motherfuckers participants in the movement. There's a difference in the movement and the conscious community. You know what I'm saying? The movement has accountability, and that's one of the things that lack right now. So it's easy for Colors or whoever to come along and buy a bunch of mansions and shit like she's fucking Mr. Rourke from Fantasy Island. You know what I'm saying? So it's a simple thing for the Tamika Mallorys to come along and to pop that shit and look like Sister Soldier on the TV because of the fact that at the end of the day, it's party and bullshit like the last poets talked about. But when there comes a time, and there will come a time when these motherfuckers will get checked because of the fact that, as the preacher man used to say, it's getting late in the evening. You know what I'm saying? And that's where the responsibility and accountability comes.
And I want to say real quick, just because you did bring up Tamika Mallory, and I was actually thinking of the rapper, I can't remember her name, who actually defended her and, basically tweeted something like, activists need to make money and, we don't have time for, basically broke folks whose hobby it is to, whose whose hobby is activism, to get in the way of activists. And it's like, okay, first of all, just the fact that people believe that poor people, and this, Kalonji, speaks to the class issue that you raised. People believe that there are people out there who believe that folks fighting for our lives is a fucking hobby.
That's right.
Is insulting right there. That's just serious class hatred. And they have this idea because people are poor and they're not able to get on a Grammy stage and say some meaningless words and then, get a sponsorship with Cadillac and turn into a Cadillactivist. Okay, so that's great if that's Tamika's hustle, but what does that do to advance the material conditions of working class, poor, and oppressed people who these folks are supposed to be fighting for, right? That's that issue. And then for me, as a black woman, I understand that there are a lot of badass black women in the movement, but I do believe who will take brothers to task and have done, and will continue to. But I do see the fact that these women are black women are used to stop criticism of them. They do that. They will say, well, you can't say this about Patrice Cullors or Tamika Mallory because you can't talk about black women like that. But if you grifters, yes, I can.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No. So the issue, at least for me, is not necessarily, that they're women. It's just that the fact that they are women are used as a shield to keep them from being criticized because, you can't say nothing bad about black women.
And it's a shield that men don't have, and I think that's the point that I was trying to make. I understand the class issue, but to me, it's like the same argument when people debate whether it's class or race. Nobody never once talks about gender, but me being in the organizational field or organizing field, as long as I have been, I've witnessed how men have been excluded. In certain organizations, I witnessed the hostility of certain organizations that's headed by some black women that let you know if you're a male. In fact, you and I, some years ago, attended a thing, and the anti-male hostility was definitely there to the point where I couldn't stay there anymore, and I left and I told Jacquie about it. I said, man, I felt like I wasn't even welcome. So if we are going to, there has to be some honesty. And we have to stop always wanting to always embrace what's popular or what's less controversial. Because I've been in them circles where you had certain women, for whatever their reasons is, I don't know what their reasons are or were, that did not want men involved in the capacity that we had liked to have been involved. The kind of criticism that men would take. Black men would take. I don't know how often last year we've heard from certain members of BLM that black men don't protect black women, which was a total false narrative. So, and that's just swept under the rug. So, I think that we have to understand that it's not always just class all the time. There is also this rooted anti-black male stance sometimes that happens in a lot of our spaces, and I think that it doesn't get called out as much as it should. The thing with the millennial thing, what I was trying to explain about that is that I just, I do see, and I'm glad that Jared had kind of clarified, because that's where I wanted to go with it, is the fact, but there is, I was raised a little differently than my children who are millennial are raised, and they have the different value systems or different understandings of things than I come. My father, he wasn't a touchy-feely guy, So I'm just saying that the way that we approach a lot of these things, I think are generational. But
Baba, the real quick, the point that I would want to just quickly want to make, I think we're even being drawn into the mistake of allowing BLM to become the standard by which we talk about and judge activism. So what I'm trying to suggest is that we push that aside, because even as we've dealt with on our own channel, there have been
members within that organization who are younger and some older, all of whom have been coming out publicly lately saying that their attempt to build within that organization did not go well because they were trying to address differently some of even the issues you're raising. Right. So I'm just trying to point out that there is what I think is the bigger issue, or the biggest issue, is that there is an attempt by the state and its minions to promote the versions of activism I think we're all here in criticism of. But we should be, but I don't want to let that become the standard that we conduct these conversations around. So like BLM, right. Let's move because I think, just with represented in the groups here, whether it's CMB, the Siafo movement, FTP, all that kind of stuff, my former work within MXGM or Organized Coup from back in the day, like there was a lot of different things happening that I think is still going on in pockets that is being suppressed by this new narrative and this new standard. And I think, anyway, that's,
Now, I'd like to add on because definitely I see both sides of the equation. And I think, Baba L'uqman, I think the thing is, it boils down to who you came up with. You understand what I'm saying? Like I come from the Fulani Sunni Alis and the Njeri Alghanis and folks like that. Whereas, you know what I mean? Like even with us with FTP and the African Martial Arts Institute, there's no girl push-ups, there's no women's lib or no male situation, none of that type shit. The police, when they vamp on your monkey ass, they don't care if you're a black woman, they don't care if you're a black man, they don't care if you have a fucking natural, they don't care if you got a perm, a wig, or a fucking lace front, whatever. When they roll on your ass, you a nigga. You understand what I'm saying? Right. So I agree that a lot of this shit is new because of the fact that, certain things have been changed and adjusted to make motherfuckers feel comfortable. But revolution is not a comfortable thing. Right. We have to be clear about that. And in saying that doesn't mean that you have to be a patriarchal bastard. I'm saying simply that we have to realize that we are against the fucking state. And the state, when you're talking about being at war with the state, they're at war with your black ass. They're not gonna be like, oh, just because you're a black woman and shit, I'm not gonna kill you. You know what I'm saying? We see Sandra Bland. Just because you're a child, I'm not gonna kill you. We see Tamir Rice. You know what I'm saying? And the other 13-year-old young man who was murdered in Chicago a couple days ago. So we gotta be clear that it's also, the class struggle part is when you have motherfuckers who are activists. I'm not an activist, I'm a revolutionary. You understand what I'm saying? I'm a freedom fighter. You know what I'm saying? And we have to be clear about something as well because of the fact that we assume that being a revolutionary means you're a righteous man. You understand what I'm saying? Every fucking revolutionary is not righteous. It just means they're against the fucking state or they're against the government. You know what I mean? So we got to be absolutely clear about that. Our quote unquote standards and our ideals and views and morals and shit get twisted sometimes because of the fact that we think that there's some type of standard that okay, boom, in order for you to be a revolutionary, you can't eat meat. Or in order for you to be a revolutionary, you can't say fuck this or fuck that. That ain't my particular position. You know what I'm saying? I'm more comfortable dealing with brothers and sisters in the street than I am in a fucking hall or community center talking about what the streets and what the community need to be doing. You understand what I'm saying? We get those type of things. We have town hall meetings, but the motherfuckers from the town ain't there. Who are you to be so arrogant to dictate the reality of the masses?
So we're going to come back from our third break, and we're going to hit a little bit more, I think, on some of this gender and identity stuff, because I want to get in that too. So we're going to come on our third break. We come right back at Renegade Culture.
Hot up in here.
Fuck the police.
Yeah.
I'm not sure anymore who is knocking at my door. Yeah.
That was it?
I didn't want to give it to him yet. They ain't ready for that.
Nigga, you was never sure who's been knocking at your door.
Shout out to my man Sean Price, R.I.P. Sean Price.
Word.
You know what I mean? My man Perfect Jab in the building. What up, Jay?
Jay? All right, that was a little moment of silence there. All right, y'all, how y'all doing out there? So, we're going to get back with our program. We were talking about performative activism, Petit Bourgeois organizing and activism. And so we was, at the end of that last segment, we started talking a little bit more about sort of identity politics as this term sometimes, right? And so the only thing I wanted to add is that I do think it's okay for there to be sort of a correction in general organizing, right? So I do think there's a history, particularly in Black nationalist organizing and politics, where there was male domination, where there was woman subordination. And so I think one of the things that's been added in this new generation is to say, one, let's not think that all the things that happened in the past were led by men, that men were the only folks doing that work. And so as we correct that record and say, you know what, women have to take leadership roles too, and that the most marginalized folks, as they say in our community, LGBTQ folks, there has to be room for leadership for all. So I'm down with that correction. I think that's been needed. It's something that we should have done long time ago. The problem becomes when anybody starts to use that as a defensive shield to avoid critique and or criticism of their actions in the movement. I don't think anybody, based on their identity, male, female, sexual orientation, gets a pass in terms of what it is the work that they do just because of something around their identity. And I think that becomes also something that's pushed on into our movement as a way, like I brought up those other things around why we can't critique this one or critique that one, but that also becomes this idea of you can't critique how someone is spending the money, right?
Like that,
you can't, appreciate that, man. Don't disrupt my flow, B.
I was thinking about it.
Don't do that. So you can't correct, you can only overcorrect somebody and not allow them to be like, so where is the money going? How come we don't have an open process for deciding who's leadership? How come there's not a collective leadership that gets to decide, when you get $90 million in 1 year, that gets to decide how that money is redistributed to your chapters, to your organization programs, that kind of thing. And I think that becomes the thing that people are fighting against. And then again, the shield comes up around, oh, you can't critique this one and you can't critique that one. And so that for me becomes just like this interplay of stopping our organizing for moving forward, because then we don't get grounded in critique, we don't get grounded in the radical politics, we get grounded simply in identity as opposed to the work that's supposed to be getting done on the ground for our people.
Right, I agree.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And when we look at, true revolutionaries compared to, activists, like you all were saying, I think the big difference is when we come up against these issues and we do try to call to attention some of this stuff that's done, whether it's, Patrice Cullors or whether it's, what's that, Talcum X, Sean King, or, the shit he was doing, or, derailment.
No, wait a minute, stop.
Pause.
What did you call him? What did you call him?
Did you call him
X?
You call him Talcum X?
You not up on all that? Talcum X?
I heard of it, but Kamau and Sean King beefing because they trying to see who the lightest out this motherfucker. Kamau like, fuck that. That's my man. I fuck Kamau. Did Sean King go to Morris Brown?
Whoa.
Sean is light in a very, very bad way.
That motherfucker,
I can't. Oh goodness.
There's a whole bunch of them that I'm struggling to come to terms with right now. But there's a whole list. There's a whole just rack of names about Sean King.
So is it unfair to start smacking the shit out of these people, or is that just too much?
No, I mean, look, I think that when we're dealing with people who are calling themselves activists and they have the ear of the corporate media, which we know is the propaganda arm of the state. So of course the CNN and MSNBC and even every once in a while Fox News is going to have these people on to say what the state wants them to say. Right. So the state is fine with them saying, okay, yeah, let's reform this system. Let's get some change, or that because they're never going to say the things that we want. They're never going to say, burn this shit to the ground. They're never going to say this system needs to go. They're always going to keep the issues on reform and incrementalism and supporting neoliberalism, but not calling it that because too many of our folks don't know what the fuck that is and don't know that they've been living under austerity politics for 40 years, pretty much. And they do put up these, these defensive shields to keep people from criticizing. You can't criticize me because I'm a black woman. You can't criticize me because, I'm queer or I'm trans or I'm, this kind of thing. Or no, you can't criticize me because, and we hear some of this too. Like, you can't criticize me because I've been in the struggle for 50 years. Right, and what you gonna tell me? Well, if you stealing money, which is what this is, look, we have jobs. We work. So we understand people got to pay their bills. We all got to eat. But at the end of the day, if we're not using the resources that we get, however we get them, whether you go into a 9-to-5 or you robbing a bank, I honestly don't give a fuck. I kind of hope you do rob a bank, actually. But I mean, if we're not using those funds to collectively uplift our people in every way possible, then yes, Kalonji, we should be punching these mugs in the face. Yeah. That's how I feel, because I mean, when I look back at the Black Power movement, at the Black Power movement and the Civil Rights movement, there were Black folks who were business owners, who had straight jobs, you know, who went to church and might not have been able to go to, you know, a Panther meeting, or, you know, because they didn't want to be criticized, but they funded the movement. Mm-hmm. They funded the movement. Right. That's not what these people are doing.
Not at all.
So, you know, yeah, they absolutely need to be kicked in the back. I
got one correction, Jacquie, L'uqman, and that one correction is revolutionaries do not rob banks. That's called appropriation and reparations. You understand? Reparations.
Reparations.
You know what I'm saying? So it's appropriations because of the fact that you're taking that money and you're taking it back to the people they stole it from.
And it's also the point that it also is a challenge to the whole notion that there should be professional, nonprofit paid or well-funded activists. Mm-hmm. Right. That the struggle is a liberation struggle that at times needs to appropriate resources in ways that it needs to. Mm-hmm. For me, to your point, Kamau, the way you started the question, I think is important. All of these corrections are necessary. There are all kinds of problems that need correction. The issue that keeps coming up is this correction going to be some liberal or neoliberal correction, right, or is it going to be a revolutionary correction? Right. So if we go back, a lot of these issues, we act like even during the Black Power era, that these issues weren't being discussed, that these weren't being dealt with, that sisters weren't leading. So I just keep pulling out Sophia Bakari's The War Before. She talks about this in there and says that the issue of gender within the Black Power struggle, Black liberation struggle, needs to be taken on in the context of a national liberation struggle, right, not in the context of trying to assimilate for some neoliberal nonprofit funding. Mm-hmm. That's the kind of correction to all of this that we need, and that's the kind of correction that I'm not seeing happen enough within these, again, imposed surface level organizations. I do think that this work is being done in formations that are not either well known or certainly well promoted, or in some formations that don't want to be well known or well promoted. So that's why I just want to keep coming back to this refrain of, I don't ever want us to let these highly critiquable and criticizable formations become the standard that we consider when we think about what struggle really is. Like Daruba said, BLM is Black Liberation Movement, not Black Lives Matter.
That's all it is, and that's all it ever will be. You know what I mean? And I appreciate you, Jared, you know, coming from the academy. You know what I'm saying? It's rare that it's so many folks that come out from a whole nother angle. You understand what I'm saying? So I always respect your work because of the fact that it's true revolutionary work, and it's not just some shit that just came from textbook philosophies and all that type of shit.
Forgive the interruption, but I think it's important. Not that anybody should know my story, but it's important to point out that I went into the academy after having already decided that revolution was necessary and having already engaged in political activism and struggle. So I went into the academy with a very different, I was not, you know, my revolutionary transformation happened long before I walked into a classroom. So that's, anyway, so I just want to point that out.
But that's I appreciate important. You. That's important.
So the last thing I want to touch on briefly, and I think you guys talked about a little bit, is the idea of like how movements are now getting formed, right? And again, this is something that's happened over the last 30 or 40 years, which is the idea now that as opposed to people gathering together based on ideological formations, the idea around struggling for liberation because liberation needs to happen for our people, folks start nonprofits, right? And we all, even those who consider ourselves the most radical, get caught up in, we start nonprofits. We get 501c3s, we start writing grants, because we get like these, like we're gonna get a pop of like 10,000, 20,000, 50,000, obviously even more than that these days. And so it's almost like this movement capture is complete, right? Like the Ford Foundation, the Rockefeller Foundation, they also set the tide back, and I think Robert Allen talks about this in his book, that, they set the tide back in the day for deciding which organization would live and which ones would die because they'd be strangled by the state, right? So we talk about that. So what do we think is how do we break out of that? You know what I mean? Like, what do you think are some good ways to break out of that? And even talk about maybe some movements on the ground, Jav. You've mentioned a couple of them that we think are pushing forward in a way that's not strictly based on this kind of like movement capture that 501c3 and foundations have sort of created together.
Yeah, I mean, we see, something that Jared just mentioned a few minutes ago, that there are organizations that are doing the work and that are sticking to the principle of revolution without wanting to be known. I think that is for me, that's like part of the key. I'm automatically suspicious of people who always want to be in front of TV cameras, right? Like, if you're not taking that platform and educating people on our history, on the politics of where we are and where we need to be, and this revolutionary struggle, then I'm kind of suspicious if all you're always in front of the camera talking about we need to vote for a politician and we need change, this, that, and the third. So organizations like the All African People's Revolutionary Party, the Ujima People's Progress Party in Maryland, their political party that is focused on, centering working class and poor people and their interest in the political system in Maryland. That's a part of this that's needed too, because once this system is gone, how we gonna do politics? We gotta teach people about that way. There's Black Alliance for Peace. There's Pan-African Community Action. Nobody other than the people who are members of these organizations know anything about these organizations, because these formations are not, sitting in front of the camera trying to get on the Grammys, trying to, spread a message and tell folks, oh, it's time for folks to stand up, like, Tamika Mallory did, like we haven't been. But that's the thing. There are people who are doing this very performative, activism-y kind of work who can get on these platforms and say those kinds of things and frame this struggle as if there are not people standing up and as if there have not always been. But we know on the ground in each state that we're in, there are thousands of us toiling in these organizations, with small Facebook page, doing book studies, especially during the pandemic, handing out PPE, creating mutual aid, doing collective kind of economics or work or whatever, and people are standing up. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the way we have to continue to do this, but we also have to reach out and connect those organizations and those people together to grow this movement, because it's not an underground movement, it's just an ignored movement. I think I think this is just an ignored, we're just ignored people, and I kind of dig it that way, because then that way you can't see us coming.
No doubt.
So,
I'd like to shout out the Siafu movement. I'd like to shout out Community Movement Builders, FTP movement, the African Martial Arts Institute, the Urban Survival Preparedness Institute, the National Coalition to Combat Police Terrorism, Mama's Army, Siafu Youth Corps, and all the folks who roll with the ants, you know what I mean? And all those brothers and sisters around the country and around the world who, as Jackie just said, you know what I'm saying, are out here making moves without having to constantly be in front of the motherfucking camera. You understand what I'm saying? We understand that the state is our enemy, and we understand that the media, as we see it, is a propaganda machine for the state. You know what I mean? And that's why we're building BPM. So for our listeners and our viewers right now, make sure that you go to Black Power Media on YouTube and follow us, including the people that's in this room right now. Follow us on Black Power Media on YouTube. Also go to blackpowermedia.org and subscribe. We have a dope morning show that we'll be kicking off next week called The Remix. And everybody you see on this joint right here will be on that, along with some other dope folks. The last dope intellectual, Dr. CBS, Dr. Layla Brown, and who am I forgetting? Dr. Chele.
A whole bunch of doctors.
Yes, a whole bunch of goddamn doctors, including the ear doctor.
The ear doctor.
The ear doctor who got his degree in goddamn marijuana pharmaceuticals.
Oh, damn.
And Morris Brown. You know what I mean? So we appreciate you all supporting what it is we do. You rock with Renegade culture, and as always, FTP mean fuck the press, fuck the police, fuck the Pope, fuck the president, and fruition through persistence. You know what I mean?
So on that note, we're going to wrap up here on Renegade Culture. We want to thank our guests for coming out. Dr. Jared Ball, the L'uqman family.
Yes.
Before we go, though, you know what? We didn't read our Patreons off, and I think when we come back, our special musical guest is going to be
Rogue Dynamo.
Rogue Dynamo. And check it, Rogue Dynamo came with like 36 brothers, you know what I'm saying? Bruce Banner and Scarborough Hall. They got masks on the whole line and shit.
Right.
I had to make sure they was on the same side of history.
Oh, goddamn, no.
But I think they good, though. We're on the same team.
So we're going to be back here at Renegade Culture.
Fuck you heard.
Renegade Culture.
What up, man? Renegade Coaches in the building.
Oh, man, you feeling good today, man. You doing all right?
I'm always feeling good, man.
You always feeling good?
Man, listen, man, it's harder than the times out here, man. It's like I'm 50 years old. I ain't trying to be stressed the fuck out, bro.
True.
You know what I mean? Trying to live and love and all that good shit.
We all need that. We all need a little love in our life, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So
you
anyway,
loving that cup, I see.
I'm definitely loving that cup because it got what the fuck I need to be in.
True.
Nah,
we was blasting him during the break because, you know, he didn't bring enough for everybody to share out.
Hey, man, this ain't the Salvation Army.
God damn.
Motherfucking.
Pay for your own.
Now, if y'all want to sip after me, now I want to sip after y'all. I'm just saying, though.
No, my brother, you got to get your own.
Okay, you look like the cat from the commercial back in the day, too. Don't know, my brother. You got to get your own.
I thought you meant Fat Albert, man.
They called that man Bookman.
We got Corny 1 and 2 trying to bring some. Corny 1 and 2.
My bad.
And you not call that man, yo, server, my man. You not call him Fat Albert. You not call him Bookman. That man is rerun.
Let's get it straight.
No, respect this man.
No Roger, no
Respect
rerun,
him.
no rent.
No,
Hey, you look like Rob.
So speaking of rent,
Wayne.
we didn't do this at the beginning, but we want to make sure we correct our mistake. We got some brand new Patreons
Absolutely.
who hooked us up this week, so we want to give a special shout out to them. Can we go? Boom, drum roll.
Yeah.
Randolph Carr.
Okay.
Letitia Williams.
David.
Joshua Reeves.
Osiris Jamal.
JD.
Andrew Wincliffe.
John Costa.
Geraldo Mazza.
Timothy Johnson.
And Linda Deloach.
James Sutter. John Armstrong. Ashel Patel, and fuckface with your $2. Enough respect for all the Patreons.
Yeah, he went down fuckface on this shit.
Yeah, that nigga deserves a shout out. Yo, shout out to fuckface. I know a couple fuckfaces around the way.
But you're the best fuckface we ever had.
Hey,
So you know
listen,
$2 fuckface.
Hey, listen, it all counts. Just be a cheerful giver. We appreciate all the Patreons.
Word up.
So we got a special musical guest that Mr. Server is going to do the intro.
Okay.
Hey, yo, we got a superstar in the house, as we always do in Renegade Culture. You know
How we doing, Renegade Culture?
We got Rogue Dynamo in the house. Artist from Atlanta. Yo, first of all, give it for Rogue Dynamo.
Rogue Dynamo, are you here?
Now she's a Renaissance hip hop artist. You know what I'm saying? She's a producer. She's a fashionista, and of course, you know, she rocks different type of styles, and she's out of the ATL. So once again, give it up for Rogue Dynamo.
Yeah, folks, you heard Rogue Dynamo in the building.
Thank you for joining us, Rogue. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Thank you for having me.
Okay. Love the hair. Purple rain. That's how we do around these motherfuckers. Like that shit.
Tell us a little bit about your history in hip hop.
Oh man, I grew up on it. You know, I have a love for the actual culture. You know what I mean? Like not just the rap music. You know, my brother put me onto it. My cousin put me on the Wu-Tang, and I just kind of grew from there. Started writing poetry and just. You know, I just grew from there. So yeah.
She said her brother put on the Wu-Tang. That means she ain't our age. I fuck
her brother's our age. Yeah, her brother's our age.
Older brother.
You know, Kamau just found out about Wu-Tang from the series on Hulu, so you know.
I ain't that bad.
She ain't talking about Wu-Tang from the series on Hulu, right?
Yeah, nah, not
Okay,
that
good.
bad.
No, Kamau, I said. Kamau, literally.
Wow.
I just saw the damn show. It wasn't that bad either. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, Server's like, my man's like the master killer.
How many times you gonna give me that on this fucking show? Goddamn pissed out at me and shit like that. So who would you say are your musical influences then?
Ooh, Jay-Z, Nas, definitely DMX, R.I.P. Let's see, Eminem.
You doing good so far. Eminem.
Yes, I will say.
You ain't talking the white boy Eminem.
Come on, man.
But everybody she named is a lyricist.
Except Eminem. Okay. I like, you better lose yourself like that.
I mean, I went to go see the movie.
Okay.
You gotta think about my age, you know what I'm saying?
She threw a little shot.
Nah, that was something. We was hyped, you know?
Oh, 8 Mile, okay. What's my man named that the fake ass? Mackay Pfeiffer.
Mackay Pfeiffer,
What the fuck you doing the fake ass?
The fake dread,
You didn't say you seen the movie. Mackay Pfeiffer walk around them goddamn
fake dread.
dirty ass broom and mop handles on the back.
They didn't even care about that.
That's Hollywood.
So you've been on tour with, like, is it Slick Rick and some other folks?
Yeah, I opened up for Slick Rick in South Carolina. Yeah, it was Love and Hip Hop Festival.
Okay.
Yeah,
Shout out to Rick. Fuck with Rick.
And you got any current music out that you want to talk about a little bit?
Yes, my most recent project is called The Grand Escape, and that's been out. We shot a couple of videos recently for it, so people can check that out online. I have some new music coming out. We just shot a video for that. But definitely The Grand Escape is my newest whole project, EP. Yeah. And then I also have Roses and Karma, which is the one before that.
Nice. You said they could check it out. I'm sorry, you said they could check it out online. Where can they check it out at?
Everywhere. I'm on Apple Music, Tidal. It's on YouTube. If people want to stream it on YouTube, it's on Spotify. So yeah.
Cool.
Now, where are you from?
I'm from Atlanta.
You are from Atlanta. It's rare that we get home from
Atlanta. I know.
What part of ATL?
I'm a Grady baby, but I grew up in Lithonia.
Okay, hey, I'm gonna let you slide on that. See, I'm
nah,
a Grady baby, but I grew up in Lithonia.
Yeah, cause okay. Nah, here's the thing though.
Say you from New York, and then you really from like Long Island.
No, not even Long Island.
Wait.
Passaic.
Here's the thing. My family is from New York, so with the whole Brooklyn and Queens.
Canarsie.
I mean, hey, I'm just saying. Yeah. So with the whole Reagan 80s, my parents was like, nah, we're not staying here. You know what I mean? So when my mom was pregnant with me, we moved down here. So I'm like the only one of my family born in Atlanta. So
nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with that. We definitely appreciate you coming on. We heard a lot of good things about you. And we know you're gonna rip shit up, you know what I mean? Because you wouldn't even be on Renegade Culture. But what we have a thing, and I see this thing right here. Now normally, if you was in New York, you know what I'm saying, in Chinatown, we have like this Chinese looking ass bowl. Okay. You know what I'm saying? And my man, the ear doctor, he usually calls this the bowl question, right? Now we call this shit Naka's nonsense because we are guaranteed there's gonna be some bullshit up in here for you to answer. You know what I mean? So we're gonna let you reach inside this bowl. There's probably like 10,000 pieces in it. True. You're gonna pull out one. One question, the one.
Okay.
It's gonna be the one. So come on.
We sprayed it, so it's COVID free.
It's COVID free.
Okay.
We gave it a vaccination.
Okay.
All right.
You definitely got the COVID vaccination.
And he did go to Morris Brown, which just recently got the accreditation back after 35 years or something. So it may take exactly. That's true.
Yeah. All right.
I say that because the spelling might be a little.
Degree is,
wow.
Now we can actually call the bursar and see if he actually graduated.
Yeah, we got a degree.
Ooh, ear doctor. Who knows this?
Anyway, you can go ahead and read the question.
All right. Okay. What are your thoughts about artists being involved in politics? I think.
You gonna answer when you come back?
No, let her answer that. Because come back, she's gonna perform. Don't be.
Don't be rude, sir.
I think artists are people too, and they should definitely speak their mind about politics. Like, I also think that they have a platform that a lot of people don't have. So if they have an opinion of others that aren't able to have their platform, then why not?
You like that answer? That's a good answer.
I like good answer, Rogue Dynamo. Hey, Rogue for president, because all the other presidents are Rogue.
They suck.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
So we be back. Rogue Dynamo is going to hit us off with a hot song, a hot track.
She hit us with like Rogue Dynamo about to light it up, y'all. Don't get it fucked up. Renegade coaches in the building.
Bam.
Check. Yeah. So this song is called Dear Goddess. And it's basically about trusting the journey, trusting yourself. So it's for anybody with dreams and aspirations. Yeah. I'm watching sunrise and sunsets. They tell me life isn't the playbook, but compare this shit to chess. Remember making moves, don't let them see you sweat. The queen moves wherever she wants, so please don't get it bent. But yet so many of us wind up hiding, and my niece be asking questions, and I ain't one for lying. I'm just saying, sometimes it takes a minute before you get it right. She says she wants to be an artist, doesn't know what's right.
Not really sure what I should tell her. This shit ain't always sweet like Nutella, but would I change it? Never. Sometimes the unexpected makes you better, and sometimes the extra baggage makes you bitter. Some people ain't shit, but the world's so much bigger. Hate you growing up so fast while the world's getting sicker. If you really want something, you should go do that. Life's a bitch, true that. Don't worry about where you at. Cause sometimes it takes a minute for you get it right. Sometimes it takes a minute for you get it right. If you really want something, you should go do that. Life's a bitch, true that. Don't worry about where you at. Cause sometimes it takes a minute for you get it right. Sometimes it takes a minute for you get it right. It's tough to wear your heart on your sleeve and people say that you mean cause you refuse to believe in all the bullshit they preach. It's enough to fool you once, there's no need to repeat. But we caught in this rat race where they keep moving the cheese. I'm blowing tree in the breeze, call me commander-in-chief. Realizing life is too brief, but just enough to succeed. Sometimes it takes a minute for you get it. Gotta keep yourself on track or you'll forget. And when someone breaks your heart, you gotta learn how to mend it. And be careful with your time, cause you see that shit's expensive. And it's cool to be attentive, even better comprehensive. They say media is cool, they just stirring up the tension. But don't even worry about the now, it's just lessons. But before I go, I just thought that I should mention, if you really want something, you should go do that. Life's a bitch, true that. Don't worry about where you at. Cause sometimes it takes a minute for you get it right. Sometimes it takes a minute for you get it right. If you really want something, you should go do that. Life's a bitch, true that. Don't worry about where you at. Cause sometimes it takes a minute for you get it right. Sometimes it takes a minute for you get it right. Yeah. I'm gonna give my social media real quick. Everything at Rogue Dynamo. Thank you again, Renegade Culture Podcast. I appreciate y'all.